Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, helping you prepare for the PMP exam. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, your fountain of information for the PMP exam. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. PMI has defined 20 cross-cutting knowledge and skills in the PMP exam content outline. This means you may find questions about one or more of these on your PMP exam. And in this lesson here, we want to make sure that you can name, understand, and explain these cross-cutting knowledge and skills that are tested on the exam. And this slide here is intended to serve as a reminder of what it is that we are doing in the video lessons that you're watching right now. It's one of the group of videos in which we review what the PMP exam content is. The goal of the videos in our PMP exam content group is to give you an understanding of what exactly you will be tested on in the PMP exam. The PM processes here on the first line. These you have learned and seen in many of the other PM Prepcast videos. They will be tested on the exam, but we are not reviewing them again here in this content lesson series. We will, however, look at the content tasks, ethics, domain skills, and the general skills. And in this video right here, we are focusing on the general skills. These are officially called cross-cutting knowledge and skills in the PMP exam content outline, but we called them general skills in this table here simply because the words cross-cutting knowledge and skills are too long to fit into the table. As you can see, cross-cutting knowledge and skills is even too long to fit onto the title of this slide here, so we had to shorten it as well. In any case, here are the 20 cross-cutting knowledge and skills that were identified by PMI and which will be tested on the PMP exam. This doesn't mean that you will have a question about each and every one of these. It means that PMI has created thousands of questions for the PMP exam, and you will be answering 200 randomly selected questions from that pool. And some of these questions may have scenarios that test your understanding of these cross-cutting knowledge and skills. This list here is taken from the PMP exam content outline document. That's this 15-page PDF document that I have mentioned a few times already. That list is all that PMI gives us. No further explanations. But we want to give you a bit more. Like, what does active listening mean? Or how and where and when do you use it on a project? For that, let us jump into almost each one of these 20 items in detail. We will, however, not look at the Code of Ethics. We have a separate video in which we review the Code of Ethics in detail. Also, in many of the other videos in this group here where we discuss the PMP exam content, we will be discussing how ethics influences the various tasks that we need to be aware of for the PMP exam. But of course, it would be ridiculous to try and squeeze all 20 of these knowledge and skills into one single lesson. That is why we have created 4 separate lessons, and we divide these 19 really, cross-cutting knowledge and skills up, as you can see here. And in the coming minutes, you will hear me discuss active listening, brainstorming, conflict resolution, and cultural sensitivity here in the first of these 4 lessons. For each of these items, we are going to discuss, first of all, the definition. What does it mean? We're going to take a look at 2 facts about this particular cross-cutting knowledge and skill. We see where on a project we can use it, and we're also going to give you kind of a how-to, tips, tricks, stages, and maybe also a process on how to best apply the particular cross-cutting knowledge and skill. So let us jump right in with our first cross-cutting knowledge and skill, active listening. Active listening is a communications technique that requires the listener to understand, interpret, and evaluate what he or she hears. The ability to listen actively can improve personal relationships through reducing conflict, strengthening cooperation, and fostering each other's understanding. When interacting, people often aren't really listening attentively. They may be distracted, thinking about other things, or thinking about what they are going to say next. Active listening is a structured way of listening and responding to others, focusing attention on the speaker, suspending one's own frame of reference, suspending judgment, and avoiding other internal mental activities. That's important to fully attend to the speaker and hear what he or she is saying. There are three primary elements that make up active listening. They are comprehending, retaining, and responding. Comprehending is the first step in the listening process. The challenge for us as the listener is to accurately hear, identify, and interpret what is being said. Memory, retaining, is also essential to the listening process because the information that we retain when we are listening is how we create meaning from words. We depend on our memory to fill in any blanks when we're listening. We have to pay attention to the speaker, try to retain the words that are being said, and put their meaning into our memory. Responding is last because listening is an interaction between the speaker and listener. It adds action to a normally passive process. The speaker is looking for verbal and non-verbal responses from you as the listener to determine if the message that she is giving you or he is giving you is actually being listened to. So give non-verbal clues by nodding or verbal clues like saying, uh-huh. All elements of communication, including listening, may be affected by barriers that can hinder the flow of conversation, and such barriers include distractions, trigger words, vocabulary, limited attention span, things like that. Listening barriers, they can be psychological, like your emotions, or physical, noise, visual distractions, things like that. Cultural differences, these could be accents, vocabulary, and just simple misunderstanding due to cultural assumptions. They often obstruct the listening process. Frequently, your personal interpretation as the listener, your attitudes, your biases, your prejudices, they lead to ineffective communication. And if you remember the sender-receiver model, it's also known as the basic communications model from the PMBOK guide, then you most certainly remember the word noise that is included in this model. Well, many of these barriers are this very noise that we've been talking about there. And we'll get back to the sender-receiver model later on when we talk more about communications here in these cross-cutting knowledge and skills. And where do we use active listening on projects? Well, simply put, any time you communicate in meetings, requirements gathering, interviewing, remember that 90% of what we as project managers do is to communicate. So that means 90% of the time you have to be actively listening. So how do you listen actively? Well, it's really an extension of the golden rule. In order to know how to listen to someone else, think about how you would like to be listened to yourself, right? These ideas that you're going to see here are largely intuitive, but it does take some practice to develop the skills of active listening. So here is what good active listening is all about. First of all, face the speaker. Sit up straight, lean forward slightly, show your attentiveness through body language and even watching the project management prepcast. Make the test. Lie on your sofa and watch an episode of the prepcast. Then sit up straight and watch another episode of the prepcast. Lean forward, face the screen, actively listen to what we are saying here, and the experience will be completely different for you and not just for the person who is speaking. Next, you want to maintain eye contact, but only to a degree that everyone remains comfortable. Hey, I mean, it's not a staring contest, right? You want to minimize external distractions, right? Turn off the television, close the doors in your office, maybe go to a meeting room. We already talked about this. Respond appropriately to show that you understand. Murmur, raise your eyebrows, nod, lean back, follow up with follow-up questions like, what did you do then? What did she say? Show that you are listening, actively listening to the speaker, and that you are still with them. And of course, focus on what the speaker is saying. Try not to think about what you are going to say next. The conversation will follow a logical flow after the speaker makes the point. Our second cross-cutting knowledge and skills are brainstorming techniques. And yes, everybody already knows everything about brainstorming, but let's take a look at it anyway. The theory says that brainstorming is the process for generating creative ideas and solutions through intensive and freewheeling group discussions. Every participant in brainstorming is encouraged to think aloud and suggest as many ideas as possible, no matter how outlandish or bizarre they are. But that means that analysis, discussion, and criticism of these ideas is only allowed once the brainstorming session is over and evaluation begins. A couple of facts to know here. First of all, there are some variations to brainstorming: nominal group technique, group parsing, team idea mapping, directed brainstorming, individual brainstorming, and question brainstorming. I personally sometimes use individual brainstorming on my own when I need to come up with new ideas. But one fact you should also remember is that nominal group technique is in fact mentioned in the PMBOK guide. You don't have to know in detail how each of these work, but if a question pops up on the PMP exam that says nominal group technique is part of, then you have to remember that this is part of brainstorming. The second fact, yes, brainstorming is best used when a new idea is needed, and working in a group can help generate more creative inspiration. I can tell you, even though I sometimes do individual brainstorming on my own, doing it in a group is just so much more fruitful. On a project, you can use brainstorming anytime when you need to be creative, like the stakeholder identification and analysis processes, requirements gathering, risk identification, or solutions development. Anytime when you need to come up with a few good ideas on how to address a problem, an issue, or how to move forward. Here are a few tips for a successful brainstorming. Begin by selecting the right problem and the right participants. When we invite people to a brainstorming session, don't just say, let's talk about our project. Be more specific. Let's make it absolutely clear which problem we are addressing. And of course, the participants that you invite, they should be the right participants. They should be the people who know what we're talking about. They have to have some subject matter expertise in the problem that we are trying to address. You also want to select a moderator and a recorder, preferably two separate people, somebody who guides the conversation and somebody else who writes down all the ideas that are coming up. At the same time, you also want to find a location that is suitable for brainstorming. During brainstorming session, the participants should keep in mind that it's important to generate as many ideas as you possibly can. And, mentioned this one before, as you are creating these ideas, no criticism, please. No, snickering about ideas that other people are saying. Even, the slightest could put somebody else off, and you may miss out on a few great ideas. And of course, unusual ideas are always good. You may not necessarily follow up on them later on, but the unusual ideas may lead you down to a path where you find really good ideas that were inspired by the unusual ideas that people have brought up. Cross-cutting knowledge and skill number 3, conflict resolution techniques. Now, in the theory, conflict resolution is the process of resolving a dispute or a conflict by providing each side's needs and adequately addressing their interests so that they are satisfied with the outcome. Conflict resolution aims to end conflicts before they start, or, and I love this one, before they lead to physical fighting. So if you have physical fighting going on in your project, you know that you're probably a bit late. All of this usually involves 2 or more groups with opposing views regarding a particular issue, and a third group of individuals who is considered to be neutral in their opinion about this particular subject. But the neutrality bit, that is not really entirely demanded as long as this outside group is respected by the other 2 opposing groups. A couple of facts here about conflict resolution techniques. First of all, the 3 crunch elements of effective conflict management, they are the differences. We must understand the differences between the groups in order to begin conflict resolution and to be able to give them what they want. The relationship between the groups is also important, because if the relationship between the groups isn't important, well, then you can start the physical fighting, right? And of course, last but not least, communication is the 3rd crunch element. Without communication, conflict resolution cannot happen. The good news is that by resolving a conflict successfully, and now think of this as being part of your project, and you may have a conflict on your small project team. So by resolving that, it expands everybody's awareness of the situation. It gives them an insight into how they can achieve their own goals without underwhelming those of other people. It increases the group cohesion, because when conflict is resolved effectively, team members can develop stronger mutual respect and renewed faith in their ability to work together. The improved self-knowledge means that conflict pushes individuals to examine their goals in close detail. It helps them understand the things that are most important to them. It sharpens their focus. It enhances their effectiveness. Here are a few ideas in regards to where you may have to use conflict resolution techniques on your projects, starting with business needs decisions. It may happen that different business divisions have different needs in regards to where they are going, so that leads to a conflict. Obviously, that is then followed up by requirements gathering techniques. Same thing, 2 people, 2 divisions, 2 departments may have different ideas in regards to what requirements need to go into the final solution. Then planning for the next step. Should we turn left? Should we turn right from where we are right now in our project? And of course, most often, cost and contract disagreements, cost most often with your customer and your sponsor, and contract obviously with the subcontractors that you may be bringing onto the project. And here are some tips and techniques in regards to conflict resolution techniques to keep in mind should you ever be required to be the facilitator while a conflict is being resolved, or if you're just one of the 2 parties. Start by creating an effective atmosphere. It's probably not a good idea to bring people into the cafeteria at lunchtime and sit them down in a corner and try to resolve an issue. Clarify everyone's perceptions by understanding what the other people's feel and how they think. This is going to help everybody understand where the problem really lies here. Focus on individual and shared needs. Realize that you need each other in this project. In order to move forward, one group alone probably won't be able to do it. Build a shared positive power. Again, together you can take this project to the next step. look at the future, then learn from the past, because there may be a history between these people. They may be mad about something that has happened in the past, even before the project. Make sure that they understand that they are mad not at each other, but they are mad at the things that may have happened in the past. The actions is what causes these problems, not the people themselves. Then move forward and generate options, but more often than not, these options may be a bit lopsided, so they have to be developed into doables. So from the options, move into things that can actually be done, and also think about creating mutual benefit agreements instead of one side just demanding something. Help them to focus on developing an agreement and find shared goals and needs in regards to the current conflict. Let us move on to cultural sensitivity and diversity. Now, diversity is a broad term. It emphasizes the differences in culture, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and age. And when you talk about cultural diversity, you are referring to the differences from both physical and mental attitudes which influence people's thoughts and behaviors in the workplace, because a workforce usually consists of a group of people who are diverse in many ways, even if they have grown up in the same town. Some of them may be noticeable: ethnics, background, disabilities, hair color. Others may not be: religion, their beliefs, their sexual orientation, etc. The good news is that diversity provides multiple perspectives and can contribute to better decision-making in our projects. It also contributes to more effective product design and marketing, and that appeals to an increasingly multicultural consumer population. Yes, the world has gotten smaller, and no matter where you live, you are very likely in a multicultural consumer population. That means also that one of the biggest economic and social challenges that is facing many countries and many towns in the world as a whole relates to unlocking the barriers to accepting that there is a cultural diversity in our economy and in our society as a whole. And unfortunately, part of this challenge comes from ignorance and part comes from prejudice. A few areas here where cultural sensitivity and diversity plays onto our projects, definitely in teamwork, because we have multicultural teams possibly distributed around the world. Language, body language. Even though I personally work in the United States, English is not my primary language, so I actually have to translate my body language into English, believe it or not, sometimes. Interpretation of facts and situations is going to be different depending on your cultural background. And also think about team performance strategies on a global project. If you are in the United States and you want to give out a bonus, a prize, or a recognition, you would focus on the individual person. However, if your team is also in the Asian region, then consider recognizing them as a group and not pointing out individual members of that local team. As a project manager who is working with different ethnics and cultural groups, you can become more culturally competent. And you do this by going through three main stages: developing awareness, acquiring knowledge, and then developing and maintaining your cross-cultural skills. You develop cultural awareness by recognizing the value of the diversity of the people on your team. But it also means that you need to honestly assess your own biases and stereotypes. You can never, of course, acquire the knowledge and learn everything about another culture simply by working together on a project. However, acquiring knowledge about these other groups is the foundation of your cultural competence. In addition to understand the other culture, it's also essential for you to understand how the other culture views your own culture. And even though PMI is a pluralistic society with project managers coming from all over the world. Most project managers are trained locally and they are trained in a monocultural tradition. So in addition, many then continue also to practice project management as if ethnic and cultural differences are insignificant. Cross-cultural skills are developed through formal coursework, informal interactions on your teams, and of course, networking and experience on cross-cultural projects. And those were the first 4 of the 19 cross-cultural knowledge and skills: active listening, brainstorming, conflict resolution, and cultural sensitivity. There they go. I'll see you again in the second part of this lesson here. Until next time.